I know this is probably the worst time to do a presentation because it's Sunday afternoon, you've just had something to eat, and you're coming from yesterday, all the hard work on the Sabbath, and you're ready to sleep. But please try and stay with me. Now, I am going to speak some technical stuff, which I think an editor needs to know, because editing is a technical discipline. So I'm going to try to make it as easy as possible, but I'm going to try and show you some of the technical things that you need to know, the journey that you need to make to become an effective editor. So if I could have the presentation on screen, please. Thank you very much. So how to tell editing, the art of editing is basically how to tell a compelling story using video. And we're going to go to where to start and the tools that you need, and your first to last pass, I'll explain what that means. Compliance, I'll explain what that means, and I'll do a little demonstration about editing, some of the choices that you can make or I made in a video presentation. So, first of all, who am I? Well, my name's Paul Weeks, and you can see behind me, that photograph was me a few years ago when I used to film, and there I am outside number 10 Downing Street with a broadcast television camera on my shoulder. Why am I showing you that? I'm showing you that because if you dedicate your talent, whatever it is, to the Lord, you will be amazed where God can take you. My first experience with video was recording something at church. And I never knew where God was going to lead me to. I was filming the Prime Minister I filmed 2 Prime Ministers of this country. And it all started in church. So you think, oh, this is a very small little thing I'm doing. You will never know where God's going to lead you. He will open doors for you if you give your talent to him. Having said all that, let's start. Okay, so whatever you do, whatever you eat or drink, or whatever you do, do it all to the glory of God. And that's what we're trying to do here, to present the gospel using video assets to the best that we can. I love editing. It's one of my favorite parts of filmmaking, Steven Spielberg. Spend time, if you can, watching. This drives my wife crazy. But watching stuff critically. If you watch a film, especially by really great producers like Steven Spielberg, watch them critically. I'll go into more details in a minute why that's important. But from now on, I want you to watch everything you see on television with a critical eye, thinking, what did they do? Why did they do it? And how what they've done progresses the story forward. You owe it to yourself. Even the news, when you watch the news, why did they do it that way? It will help you to become a better editor. So I'm going to go through technical stuff, storytelling. I've got a little bit of a demo, and then afterwards Q&A. And hopefully this will be about an hour, and then you can go and catch a train and go home. Okay, so what is editing? I'll read this out if it's too small for you. Telling a story in the most compelling way, using the least amount of footage to change the world of your viewer. That's what you are doing as an editor. Now, there are some ethical things here, because what you're doing as an editor is shepherding a person's mind through a story. You are choosing what that person watches and how it's absorbed, and how they're going to feel about what they've watched, and what they're going to do after they've watched it. That's your responsibility. A good editor can transform something into a compelling story which changes a person's life. I was asked to do a video about a person who had visual impairment and their journey to work. And I tried to film it in a way and edit it in a way to give a person who didn't have any visual impairment a sense of some of the obstacles and the challenges that a person would come across just traveling to work on the underground and catching a bus to get to work. When it was viewed, someone wrote me an email and said, I now see the world differently. And I said, what? That's exactly what I'm looking for. Because now they're going to view everything differently as a result of watching a 3-minute video. That's the power that you have as an editor. But you've got to know the techniques, how to do it. So, where do you start? What type of video are you making? This is really important because every single type of genre of video is going to have different approaches and different skill sets. So, is it a music video? Someone singing at church that they want you to film or they want you to edit to be presented on Sabbath morning? A documentary. Your pastor wants you to edit some footage that he got from a campaign so it can be displayed at Sabbath school. Or a drama. Someone's life story that you've got the footage and you've got to edit together. All those different genres are going to need different techniques. So like I said earlier, watch documentaries, watch dramas, watch music videos with a caveat of be safe these days to see what kind of shots and how they're put together to bring across the message that's behind the story. So you understand the vocabulary of editing. Next, who's your audience? This is really important. If you're editing a video for children, you're going to have a different approach than if you're editing it for senior citizens. Now, does that make sense? So if you're editing for children, if I was editing a video for children, all the shots that I put in the timeline would be kind of short because their attention span is short. Okay, now I'm talking in generalities here, so please don't forgive me. I'm not trying to patronize anybody here, okay? But their attention is short, so you need quick, snappy edits. If I'm showing a video for senior citizens, I'm going to make sure all those shots are nice and long because they're going to take time to absorb what they're seeing longer than a teenager or a child. So you have to know who's your audience. Secondly, in your audience, what do they know? What's their starting position? In video, we have something called a story arc, which is where do they start, your audience, where do they end, and all the shots that you're going to take them to that end. That's called a story arc. So what's the knowledge of the person, where do they start? Is it they know nothing about the subject? Now, I've put together a video in a demonstration about hopefully someone that no one here knows. And hopefully at the end of that minute and a half, you'll know a little bit about them because the way I've put it together. But are they knowledgeable? If they're knowledgeable, then what sort of shots do they need? Remember, you're leading them to a place, okay? And in the story arc at the end, what do you want the persons to do? Is it you want them to go somewhere or to go to a website or to fill in a form? What information do they need to know? How important is that information? That determines where you place that information in your video. If it's something really important, you need to put it at the end because that's the last thing they're going to remember. Think about something. If I do this, if I sing this, someone said it already. I just did two notes, and you know it's about Jaws. Okay, some editor thought that's brilliant. And if you remember the shot, it was just the camera moving through the water. You never saw the shark or any person. It was just water and music. And it set the scene. And you haven't seen that film maybe in years, but it comes back to you the minute you hear it. And right now, in your mind, you are playing back scenes in that video, in that film, because it was the way it was edited. Now, does anybody remember halfway through the video, the film, Jaws, what happened? Halfway through. It's 90 minutes long, so at 45 minutes, what took place? Exactly. No one remembers that. But who remembers the end? What happened at the end? They killed the shark, right? So you watched a 90-minute film. You remember the first shot, and you remember the last shot. Think about that when you're editing. What is the first shot that your viewer is going to see? Often we have something in video called an establishment shot. If you watch the Neighbors or anything like that, when they change scene, they have a shot of the building where the next scene is going to take place. That's called an establishment shot. You now know what's going to happen in that location. You have settled in your mind where it is. In your videos, always try to have an establishment shot. It sets the scene for what comes next. It's really important. So that's one thing I want you to note, an establishment shot. So your first shot, your last shot are crucial according to your audience. Now, let's move on. Length of video, really important. Less is more. Every single frame in your video has to justify its presence in your video. No padding. If you think of a video and you think, oh, it's got to be 5 minutes long, but I've only got really 3 minutes of really interesting information, you'd be better off with a 3-minute video than 5 minutes where 2 minutes people are right, okay, my greatest critic is my darling wife. Whenever I finish a video, I show her. Did you get, and I ask her, what do you think? If she says, I don't get it, or that shot's boring, out it goes. When you're editing a video, you can get so wrapped up in the story that you forget your audience. Whenever I do a video, I show it to someone who has no idea what the video is about. So at the end of it, they think, I ask them, what did you get from it? If their answers are what I'm expecting, then I know I'm in the right direction. If they have no idea at the end of the video what the video was about, that's my fault. Secondly, when you're editing, your edits should be seamless. I'll show that in a minute and how you do that. If someone has seen what you've done, you've made a mistake. Think of all the wonderful things that you've seen on television, on film, whatever. You never think, oh, he edited there, or she edited there. You don't think that. You just follow the story. That's the beauty of editing. It must be fluid. Moving on. Okay. Time for delivery. Sometimes you've got a week to edit. I did a video for a session, SEC session. I had so much footage, and I had a week to edit it. Glory. Why? Because I could edit something, leave it, go and do something else, come back and watch it again. Sometimes you have that luxury. Others, you don't have that luxury. Someone's run up to you at 9:30. This has to be shown at 10:30 Sabbath morning. You haven't got time. You've got to know what to do. So you've got to have those techniques in your mind already. So when you watch the footage through, you think, yes, I know. I can cut here, cut here, cut here, and put it together. Bang, it works. Okay? But that takes practice. Okay? You've got to practice I always say to people, especially at work, when I make a video about making a cup of tea. 2 minutes making a cup of tea. I want you to think about the shots that are necessary. How are you going to make it interesting? And show it to me. That's what they used to do. I had a couple of guys, right, and they did that. And there was one where he introduced, now this is at work, right? They're not Seventh-day Adventists, okay? So he had a really, really brilliant way of editing the last shot of his making a tea video. And what it was, he had a table and he had the cup, and the tea was in the cup, and you see his hand going towards the cup of tea, but next to it, there's a bottle of whiskey. And all of a sudden, the man went to the whiskey. And I just burst out laughing. And I thought, now that's really interesting, because he changed the narrative and made me laugh, which means I remembered his message. And that's what you're trying to do. When you're editing something, you want people to remember what you've done. If at the end of your video, no one remembers what you did, then why do you do it? They might as well have just read a book. Moving on. Who needs to approve your video? Sometimes it might be you. Sometimes it might be someone at church. But you need to understand what they're expecting from that video to get approval. Because then you know you're going in the right direction. Every editor has a vision of what a video should look like. But your vision may not correspond to what the person who's paying the bills may want. So always be checking with them. Is this what you want? Is this because the hardest thing is trying to get their imagination to be in parallel with your imagination. That's hard. But you do it through constant going back and forward to making sure that what you're doing is in line with what they want. It's like if someone says, I want you to make a meal. Okay, what meal do you want? Rice and peas and stew. Fantastic. You go in the kitchen, you make your rice and peas and stew. And when you give it to them, I didn't ask for this. What do you mean? You asked rice and peas? No, I asked for something different. So how would you prevent that disaster from happening? You'd be corresponding. What kind of rice and peas do you want? Plain rice, rice and peas? Right? What kind of peas do you want? Gunga peas? Red beans? You'll be doing that all the time to make sure that you deliver what they've asked for. It's really important that as an editor, you deliver what was requested, not what you think they should have. Moving on. Know your tools. There's so many different types of software that you can use, okay? I'm not going to get into debate which one's best, okay? They always do the same thing. But you need to know that software like the back of your hand. You need to be proficient in using it. You can use YouTube, book seminars, keep yourself up to date with the latest techniques and how your software works. The most embarrassing thing that can happen to you if you're editing on behalf of someone and they say, can you put an L cut there, please? And you have no idea what that is or how to do it. You won't be working there very long. You need to know your software. Which leads me on to, you need to know the terminologies. If I say the word jump cut, right, does anybody know what I mean? I'm not talking about that. What's a jump cut? You need to find out what that means, okay? Basically, it means two pieces of video put together that are not smooth. It's like you'll see someone speaking, then all of a sudden it cuts to something else in an abrupt fashion. That's a jump cut. You normally cover that with what's called B-roll. I'll show you that in my demonstration. Okay, so you understand that. But the terminologies you need to know: L cut, J cut. Find out what these things mean, because you're going to need them. You need to know how to use them and when not to use them. I remember when word processing first came out, and I saw someone who'd produced something for church using first-generation word processing. And it had every single font on the page. It looked a mess, right? I'm thinking, why did you do that? Because I could. Yeah, no, you don't understand. The tools are there for you to use to make what you're presenting palatable, not to show how many things you've got in there. So, know your software, know the terminologies, and know how to use them. And there is so much information on YouTube and other places. There's no excuse for you not to know your software, not to know the terminologies that are going to be used. Educate yourself. Media management. Media management is really important. When you record something these days, it normally goes onto a chip, okay? And take that chip out and you put it into your computer to use it. If your media isn't saved in 3 places, it isn't saved. Someone has spent a fortune producing their footage for you. You take it out, you drop it in your cup of tea, and it's ruined, it's gone. No more footage. Next thing you know, you're standing in a place called a dock with Your Honor, I will pay the fine that they're giving me for losing all their footage. It's real. Make sure it's saved in 3 places. Whenever I'm doing footage, I'm editing something, it's saved on my computer, it's saved in the cloud, and it's saved somewhere else. So if something happens, if the computer dies or the hard drive gets corrupted, you've got the footage elsewhere. Okay? So make sure you manage your media. I was involved in a recording. The guy lost a part of the recording. So he put himself in it. When I saw it, I thought, you've got to be joking. We didn't pay for that. All right? So we won't be using that individual again. Okay, audio production. When a video is produced, people listen before they watch. The way God has made a human being, the audio is processed first. So people will forgive mediocre pictures, but they won't forgive mediocre audio. Your audio's got to be absolutely pristine. You've got to spend time as an editor understanding. You don't have to become a whiz-bang audio engineer, but you have to understand the fundamentals to get good audio. It's really important. I'd rather have a video with great audio and so-so video than the other way around. If you're playing something at church, and all they're hearing is, you've lost them. And you will lose them in 5 seconds. The minute that video comes on and it's bad audio, they're switched off. And you're not getting them back. So make sure your audio levels from clip to clip are the same. I'll show you that in my demonstration. Okay? So it's smooth. Make sure you understand about compression, EQ, all those elements that make audio good. You need to know them. Because if you're editing something, especially if someone's relying on you, they're going to assume you know how to get good audio. So make sure you know. Moving on. Right. Now, please don't switch off, okay? I'm going to give you some technical stuff that you need to understand why it's important, okay? Now, on the screen right now, there's a lens. I want to show you something. Right, you see these numbers here? 16, 8, 11, 8, 5.6, okay? Does anybody know what those numbers refer to in a lens? F-stop, thank you. F-stop is for the amount of light that's getting through the lens. Why is that important as an editor? I'll show you in a minute, okay? Now, it's not linear. 16, 11, 5.6, that's logarithmic, okay? Which means that between 16 and 11 and 8 and 5.6, the light doubles. So if you're illuminating something and someone's put the camera aperture to 16, if they then turn it to 11, the amount of light that goes through the lens is doubled. Now, why is that important? In modern video, there's something called logarithmic or log filming. Right, let me explain something a bit more to you. The TV that you're watching and the screen that you're watching has a contrast ratio. That's the difference between white, which is the brightest thing you can have, and black, which is the darkest thing you have, like this gentleman here. This gentleman here, sorry, I don't mean to embarrass you, but you've got a black top on, and you've got with white piping. So if I took a video shot of you and put it on a screen to edit, on a scope, which I'll show you in a minute, okay, you will see a white bar at white and a black bar and another bar at black, okay? That's important to know. If you are sending your video to YouTube, it doesn't matter too much, but if you're sending your video to Spotify or to Apple, your video has to be what's called compliant. And part of that is the illumination that you're sending on your video. It has to be within certain parameters. If it isn't, and I'll show you that in a minute, if it isn't, you'll get a nice letter from Spotify and Apple, send it back to us when it's compliant. And if you have a deadline, if your client is waiting for that video to put them up on Spotify on a certain date, and you mess that up, that will be missed. I was given some video from a very good friend of mine. They shot a music video. It was a hymn. And they sent it to Spotify, and Spotify said no. So he sent it to me. He said, I don't know what to do here. I said, well, the reason why it's failed is because of these, and I gave him the reasons why. So my job was to make it compliant so that it can be seen. Now, let me show you something else that looks horrendously complicated, but I'll try to explain it. Okay, color space. That television you have in your house, for most part, okay, is compliant to Rec. 709. What on earth is that? When all the manufacturers got together to decide how high-definition televisions were going to be made, they made a standard for the amount of color that your TV will represent on the screen. So they say, right, if you can see, there's a rectangle here, okay? That is the amount of color that your TV will put on the screen. Now, remember I told you about log filming? A log camera can film this amount of color. But if you try to just edit that and send it in, it will be refused. Because if they tried to show that on a regular television, it would look milky. It wouldn't look correct. Now, we have a new standard as well called HDR, high dynamic range. Okay? And that's this, Rec. 2020. So if someone has filmed their video in log or Rec. 2020, and they say they need you to send this to Spotify, you need to make that compliant to Rec. 709. I'll show you what that means in my demo. Now, do you start understanding the sort of technical things that you need to understand as an editor? Because if you're responsible for putting that footage together, you need to understand this background, okay? So let's move on a little bit more. Okay, checking the time. All right. When you're editing video, it's really tempting to trust what your eye sees on the screen. Do not trust your eyes when it comes to the technical aspects of your video. Do you remember I told you all the manufacturers got together to make sure that all the pictures on your TV were compliant to Rec. 709? Remember that? I just said that? Yeah? That means there's circuitry in the TV which will make sure that whatever comes in, it changes it to Rec. 709, all right? So you may be seeing an image on your TV that looks fantastic, but your TV is fooling you because the raw image that's coming in isn't compliant. Therefore, these are your best friends in your software. These are scopes, okay? I'll explain them quickly, all right? Now, excuse me. A video image is made of different components. One of them is how much color balance. So that's shown by this parade. Now, can you see red, green, and blue? Can you see that? And you can see that the amount of color is roughly the same. Do you see that? Now, I can tell without even looking at the image that this is looking at, that this, from a color perspective, is balanced. What do I mean by that? If you were to take a photograph at midday on a clear sunny day, the colors that you're seeing are balanced. If you take a same photograph in the same place in the morning, where the sun is lower, it will have a kind of a blue kind of tinge. Now, God's made our eyes amazing, and your brain will correct that color, but the camera or the video won't. If you're filming with a camera, okay, you have to do what's called a white balance, which means you're telling the camera, please, you point at a white shirt, press a button, and the camera calibrates all the colors so they're correct. So it will look like this, okay, no matter what time of day. But as the sun moves through the sky, that color will change. They call it color temperature. What is that? If you had a cubic millimeter of tungsten and you heated it up to a certain temperature, it would glow a certain color. If you heat it up to 56,000 Kelvin, 5600, it would glow white. The industry says this is what white looks like. If it gets a bit cooler, it will like say 3,200, that's red kind of color. And if it goes even hotter, it will go blue. Now, what does that mean? If you got footage from in this room, the color that you would see if it looked normal, if you took that camera outside to different lighting, the colors would change. Which means that you as an editor, you have to ensure that the colors are consistent. And that is what this is for. Because if that blue was down here, and the red is up there, I would know that that's got a red kind of color wash over it, a hue over it. And therefore, I would use the software to bring this up and to bring this down so it looks like this. Do you follow me? I hope if I'm going too fast or you don't understand, just explain that again, and I'll explain it again, all right? But that is to make, so when you're editing, these are your friends. Here's another one. To make sure your video is compliant, so it can go on Spotify and Apple, the amount of illumination has to be within a certain range. And that's what this does. Now, you see this? This is a kind of representation of what the picture looks like. Now, I'm experienced. I know that there's a human face here. Okay, and there's background here, and there's probably they're wearing something white or something white in the background here. Up here is the total maximum amount of white, illumination white you can have. And down at the bottom, right here, is the minimum amount. When you get your video and you check with these scopes, you want it to be in between the two. You don't want it down here, the picture will look muddy. And you don't want it up here, it'll be blown out. Have you ever taken a picture with your camera? It's a beautiful day like this. And you, with your eye, you can see the clouds. But when you take your photograph, it's just white. You ever seen that? The reason why that happens, because your camera cannot resolve that amount of illumination. It can't do it. So it says it's white, that's all I can do, or black. Your job as an editor to make sure that it's within, it's called IRE, within 100, it doesn't go over 100 IRE. Look it up on the internet. It will save you. If you don't know this and you submit a video, it will be rejected. Trust me. Question. IRE. It was independent. It's a scientific notification, but just know it's 100 IRE, all right? Or it can be in millivolts, but normally IRE. Now, here, okay? Can anyone see that there's a sort of a outline here? And there's a very faint line here. This vector scope, really important. Now, you see how the majority of this is going towards up here? That tells me that the skin tones are correct. Now, here's something amazing. Here's something amazing. Whether you're filming a white person or a black person, that will always be the same. Why? Because underneath are red blood cells. Therefore, it's always going to be the same. So whenever I see people going on about, different colors, and I say, listen, as far as TV is concerned, everybody's the same. But if you're filming someone and the lighting wasn't done really well, and the person's face, these lines are over here somewhere, you've got some work to do to make it back so their face is the right color. Again, I'm going to show you. All right. And now, EBU bars, it's European Broadcast Union. You can forget that. You don't need to remember that. But what you need to do, if you have the money to buy yourself, when you're editing, you've got your little edit suite, you've got your little TV, you've got your computer, is to try and get a color monitor. Not a television, a color monitor. Because remember I said that the manufacturers have put circuitry in your TV to make sure that the picture's correct? With the color monitor, that circuitry is not there. So you are seeing the picture as it is. And as an editor, that's what you want. Because you can't do any of this if you don't know how it really looks like, according to these scopes. And this is used to calibrate your monitor. I won't go into all of the details. You can look it up. But look up the word, I can't even spell it, but it's plugge. If you understand that, if you look it up, it'll be explained. Okay, moving on. Audio, very important. Remember I said people listen before they watch. Going back to Jaws, I didn't even show you an image of Jaws. I just sang the 2 notes. And it registered in your mind. Now, for all those who are my age, okay, if I say or sing, for mash take, you got it. For mash takes, that advert hasn't been on TV for over 40 years. But yet it's still in your mind, right? That's why audio is so important. Or here's another one. Oh, food. Mars a day. Hell, you know the song, you know the words. Audio is really important. How many of you, when you hear someone who can sing on Sabbath, sing a solo that is so moving, you're ready for heaven just with that song? If you're videotaping it or you're editing it and you mess that up, you will have foregone a person's opportunity potentially to give their heart to the Lord because you didn't do your job from a technical perspective. That's why it's important you understand audio. Okay, moving on. Right, now, there are some scopes, audio scopes, that can help you in your editing software, okay? First of all, okay, audio, whether it's going to YouTube or Spotify or the TV, okay, in general, you want it to peak in terms of these will sort of go up and down when you're listening, when it's going, but you want it to peak about -6, okay? You don't, sorry, forgive me. You want it to peak, just above -6, just around about there. That's where you want it to peak. So go through your video, your editing, find the loudest part of it, and see where it registers, okay? You don't want it up here. You don't want it there, okay? Because digital audio will literally cut it off, and you get, and you don't want that. And also you get, it's not compliant. So you want it to average around about here, and peak about here. And this is a new thing called LUFS. Some clever people, right, worked out, because when they give something for television, it's got to be compliant to a certain level. But some people worked out, you know what, if we put a lot of compression on it, it will sound louder. It will pass the compliance, but it will sound louder. So what do most people do when there's an advert, come on. They get up to go to the kitchen, they go whatever, okay? So if I'm someone who's paying for a advert, I want them to hear the message, which means if I make it louder, they're more likely to hear it. And then someone in authority said, no, you can't do that, right? That's against the rules. So now we've got this thing called LUFS, so it's got to be within a certain range to make sure that you don't try to inadvertently get your message across louder than it should be. Look it up on YouTube, okay? It will be there. All right. How long have I got? Oh, dear. Right. Right, I've got to move on. Okay. Remember I told you about the story arc, okay? Your first shot and your last shot and how you get from one to the other. That's how you develop a story. Remember, everything in your video has to justify its position. Okay, so in your story arc, this is the current image that you're watching. Does it match the previous image, and does it go towards your next image? As an editor, that's what you're always thinking. What's come before, what's now, and what's coming next? Always have that in mind. They've got to flow together. You don't want a situation where the next shot is so different from the previous shot that the person is jarred out of their seat. They don't know what they're watching. So your job is to make sure that happens. And there's some techniques if you're going from one scene to another where you can get around that. But I'll show you that in a moment. Okay, remember your first shot and your last shot. So important. Okay, finally, okay, before I go into my demo, check everything. If you have the time, put your edit away for a little while. Come back to it in an hour later. Look at it with fresh eyes. Get someone else to check it, okay? Does it say what you want it to say? Is it the length you need? Does it give the right impact? Okay, and is it compliant? Technically, audio and visual. And then you can deliver your video. Okay, so, and now I'm gonna go to my computer and do a very small demo. What I've done, I've got some footage of a singer that hopefully no one's ever heard of before, all right? Don't worry, it's safe. It's not anything, that's gonna cause you to have to sin. Right, so let me just change my computer. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm going to show you, this is just a software that I use, okay? You can use any software, but I want to show you some of the things and why I use this software. But anyway, so I'm going to put the microphone next to the speaker, and I'm going to play a minute. Just watch, and then I explain what I did.
Hi, I'm Ali Sherlock. I am a singer, songwriter, performer, busker. I'm a social media creative, and yeah, that's who I am. Starting busking at such a young age was, it was definitely different. I was one of the only kid buskers on the street, and I broke so many rules that day, like the first day I went out busking in Dublin. But, seeing now so many younger buskers as well come up to me and say that they've started busking because of me. And it's so amazing to see that I've been an inspiration for so many other people. Whereas, like, when I was their age, like 12, 13, like my inspiration to busk was like Ed Sheeran. And it's just amazing. I don't get goosebumps when I sing. I think I'm very critical of my singing. If I listen back, I'm just looking for problems. And then if my dad is like watching me while I listen to the song, he'd like be showing me a video. He was like, wow, look at your performance earlier. He's like, it was so amazing. And I'm looking and I'm like, I know that I'm looking for problems. He's like, stop looking for problems. Like, you were great. It was a great performance. I'm like, no, I don't like how I sang that word. So I think I looked too deeply into it. But I definitely get goosebumps for other people's music. Like when they really put their heart into a song and it's a really beautiful song, it gives me the goosebumps.
Okay, I'm going to stop there, all right? So hopefully I've introduced someone that you've never seen before. Now, the thing I was doing while you were watching the screen, I was watching you. I was watching your reaction, how much concentration you were devoting to what you were seeing. Because that showed me, okay, I've got your attention. Tick number 1, I've got your attention, which means some of the things I did worked. Now, I'm going to show you a few things. Hopefully, you can see on the screen. Okay, so the first thing I've got, this video is about this singer. So the first thing I'm going to do is show an establishment shot. Now, I'm going to reveal something to you which you wouldn't have seen before. Okay. I want to see. Oh, I know why. Okay, I'll show you that in a minute. Okay. Right, this is what I wanted to show you. Now, this was a multi-camera shoot. So it was my job as an editor to pick which shots worked. So the first thing I wanted to do, all right, it was to have, now the shot you're seeing in the top left-hand corner where our mouse is, that is the shot, and you can see here, that you saw first, my establishment shot. I'm showing you who she is. I'm not showing you this, it's too tight, it's too intimate. I can show that later. I'm not showing this one, is because there's other things in the shot, distracting. I want you to see her. So that's my very first shot. Okay, so let's run it through again.
Hi, I'm Ali Sherlock. I am a singer, songwriter, performer.
Now, notice what I did there. I did a cut. So she looks down. It's really important that you know what your footage looks like. Okay, you've got to be familiar with this, with what you're trying to say and the footage that you've got. Now, notice where the cut comes. This is what's called a cut. Where I'm going, a cut is similar to a blink. If you blink, think of that as a cut, right? Watch where I did the cut.
Songwriter.
Notice, she looks down, and then she looks up. And the cut comes just before she finishes looking up. That's a concept of cutting on action. Okay, write that in your mind, write it down. A good editor cuts on action because it smooths out the cut. Okay, so I've cut on action there.
Songwriter, performer, busker. I'm a social media.
So she says, I'm a social media. So she's coming back to me. Okay, so I can change that in the edit, and then I wanted to show everyone what was going on. So now I picked a different shot.
Creative, and yeah.
Now, the last shot, she's looking down. So let me go back to how it was in the original, okay?
Hi,
So I've put her name, it's called lower third, okay? Because it's in the lower third of the image. Okay, and I've also put for accessibility captions.
Ali Sherlock. I am a singer, songwriter, performer, busker. I'm a social media creative, and yeah, that's who I am.
So I listened to the footage, what she said. In 10 seconds, you know who she is and what she does, from not knowing anything about her. So now I said, right, this is important. You know who she is, what she does, even, and so on. Then I can expand the story.
Starting busking at such a young age.
So she's now talking about something that's really close to her. So now I've picked the shot where it's close up. Okay, it's intimate. So I've picked an intimate shot as the editor. I could have had the wide shot, or I could have had the shot with all the other stuff, people in it. But I would lose the intensity of what she's trying to say by picking those two shots. So this is the shot I picked.
It was definitely different. I was one of the only kid buskers on the street.
Now I've gone to what's called B-roll. She's singing, okay? Now notice what I've done. I've started with an establishment shot where she is. So she's in the street with people around her. So now you know where she is and what she's doing. An establishment shot.
And I broke so many rules that day, like the first day I went.
So now I've cut on action. Okay, if you were to listen to it a bit closer, she's changing her words and the song changes, and that's a really good shot because it's a moving shot and I'm cutting on action.
Out busking in Dublin. But, seeing now so many younger buskers as well come up to me and say that they...
So now I've cut back because now I'm going back. Remember I said, what's the current shot? What was the previous shot? What's the next shot? Do you remember that? So my next shot, I'm going back to her.
They've started busking because of me, and it's so amazing to see that I've been an inspiration for so many other people, whereas
Okay, so now I'm going back. She's talking about herself. Okay, so that's the mindset I've got, okay? I am shepherding a person through the story. Now I'm going to go do a couple of technical stuff, and then I'm going to take some questions. I'm going to put what's called a scopes up so you can see. Oh dear. That shouldn't have happened. Let me just go back in. Right, there you go. Let me just put the scopes up. Okay, now you see this? Remember I was talking about the scopes? Now let's look at this image critically. In the image, there's a lot of white in the background. She's wearing a black top and her face. Look at this. This is how much brightness is in the image. This bar here is the background, that white background. And notice where it is, it's under 100. Do you see that? Okay. Now look what happens if I change that. So let me just click on that. Let me go back to that shot. Actually, this is a better one to use, okay? So if I click on that, and I'm going to go to my controls, which is here. I'm going to go to wheels. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to deliberately push up the highlights. And you'll see this line go up and up and up, and you look at the picture, what happens? Well, watch. You see that? It's getting brighter and brighter. Do you see that? Now, that's not compliant. That's way over 100. So I've got to bring it right back down to there. So that's good. And notice the image looks normal from a color perspective. Look at the colors. Now, it's a little bit blue because, the blue's a bit down because of the day. Now, I'm going to take this off and look very closely at, I'm going to try and make sure you can see it a little bit better. Okay. Look at the image. Look very closely. I'm going to turn it on and turn it off. Watch. Did you see that? I'm turning it on and I'm turning it off. Right? That is how it came. This is with color correction. I did that to make sure that all the colors are going to be nice and smooth. So every time you go to that sequence, the colors are the same. You follow that? So this is why you need to understand about the technical part of your video. The last thing I'm going to show you is the audio. Now, if you look closely on the right-hand side, I'm going to make it slightly bigger, so let me just take those scopes off. And, okay. I want you to look here on the right-hand side, okay? This is my levels. These are my levels. So let me play it. And I'm going to play between two completely different shots.
But I definitely get goosebumps for other people's music. Like when they really put their heart into a song and it's a really beautiful song, it gives me the goosebumps. My first musical experience was when I was...
You see that? Did you hear that? Two different shots, but the audio is consistent. I had to do that. I had to make sure the audio was consistent. That's my job. And I use those things on the side, those VU units, to make sure that it's at the same level. Because then, if I didn't do that, if it suddenly got soft, okay, you'd notice it. And you want your video to go through and you don't notice what I've done as an editor. You're following the story. Because in that first minute I showed you, you were just following the story. I was looking at your faces. You was introduced to this lady, and you know what she does and how she does it. That's your job as an editor, to make the story that you're telling as compelling as possible, using the technical know-how that you're going to learn and the techniques that you're going to deploy to make sure that it is compelling to the viewer. Thank you. Now the bit I'm frightened of. Your questions. So, who's got a question? Anyone got a question? It can be anything. They're silly questions. A question over here. We got a microphone for this? Oh, they're going to come here. Okay, fine. Okay. I think Slim Fast is what I need to know next. Anyway, anyways. Okay, your question, sir.
So, thanks for everything. It's just a simple one. What's the best software to be used? Because we know that, we all have various cameras and equipment, right? So what's the best one?
The best software to use is the software you know. This is Final Cut, okay? That's the software I use. Now,
for a beginner.
Pardon me?
For a beginner.
For a beginner, right. For a beginner, I would use, if you've got a Macintosh like mine, there's one called iMovie, which is very easy to use, okay? If you're on a Windows platform, sad, but if you're on a Windows platform, there's lots of different editing packages which are really easy. But in any editing software, right, the most common things you're going to be using are dissolves and cuts. You don't need to have all the fancy stuff. Dissolves and cuts are your bread and butter, okay? You're going to be using that 98% of the time. All the other stuff, the technical stuff, is to make sure your video meets technical requirements, okay? So if for a beginner, okay, you could even start editing on your phone. What you're learning is the techniques, not so much the software, okay? You need to understand the techniques and how those techniques are deployed within the software that you're using. So my answer is, whatever you have, like Moses, use the stick in your hand, but make sure you know how to use it. Next question. That's it? Okay, shall we stand for, no. And next question. Any question will do? You got a question? Okay, fine.
Thank you very much for the presentation. My questions are more on the gadgets to use, on the basis that, I'll give you a practical example. In our church, we had a break-in, and the cameras were taken away, inclusive of, I believe, I think the sound system or components of it. Now we are in a position where we are trying to make things work. What will be the basic minimum which will provide a platform which will at least bring out something which is presentable?
Okay. First of all, I would take the treasurer out to dinner. Because what you're going to spend is money, right? So, I'll do cameras first, okay? Whatever cameras you decide, there's lots of different cameras. You can have point and zoom, and those fixed ones which move up and down, and you control them remotely. Whatever cameras you use, okay, like that one, okay, try to buy them all at the same time from the same manufacturer, because if you get different cameras from different manufacturers, when you cut from one camera to another, the color will always look different, okay? Even though they're supposed to technically be the same, They always look different. So try and get cameras that are made by the same manufacturer and bought at the same time. And if you can, look at the serial numbers to see if they're sequential. Because when you put those cameras up, okay, those cameras will look the same. So, audio. Get professional audio microphones if you can, right? And the setup. Get someone who knows what they're doing to set up your audio setup, all right? I went to a church in Atlanta. Sorry, no, not Atlanta. Went to Oakwood, and it was something just like this, okay, a media event, okay? And they took us to a church, and they said, this is the way to do it. And you know what they did? They got a professional to set up their audio, and the audio equipment they bought was lockable. So when it was set up, it was locked. So the only thing that the regular members could do was turn it on and turn it up, right? And where it was turned up to was also locked. So even if they went right to the top, it wouldn't make a lot of difference because the amount of volume was fixed, okay? The brethren are always helpful, but sometimes you don't want the brethren to go anywhere near it, okay? So those are things I'd recommend. First of all, you could buy cameras, buy them all the same time if you can, and if you get audio equipment, get as professional as you can and get a professional to set it up. All right? That's the best I can give. All right? Any follow-up or anything else? I can't give manufacturers, okay, because most manufacturers at the professional level are good. You consult with people, especially with the microphones, because different microphones do different things. Some microphones are for choirs, some for individuals, some are lapel mics. So you need to know what you're going to do every service and get the equipment you need to facilitate that.
What would be your advice on the audio recording?
Audio recording, if you've got a good source, good microphones, okay, and it's routed properly through to your recorder, you can record to start off on a laptop. Just get the right software and just record it on the laptop and it's good to go. Okay, that's the cheapest and best way to start.
Thank you very
All right.
much.
Anything else? Thank you so much. Any question you want, I'll do my best to try and answer.
So once again, thank you for your presentation. I think we should give another round of applause. Thank you. So I've got two questions. The first one, the last one's a bit more challenging, so apologies.
Okay.
But the first one is, if there was one piece of advice that you were giving to like a younger person that wanted to get into the field of like editing and so, what would you say?
What I would do, with a huge caveat of safety, is try to couple yourself as an apprentice.
Okay.
To people who know what they're doing. It will mean long hours. It will mean you're carrying heavy equipment, but you're learning. You're watching professionals, okay? When I was a bit younger than this, I became basically an apprentice to a company, and I was carrying boxes and so on, but they allowed me to film what's called B-roll, okay? And I watched the professionals. Secondly, get training, right? You've got to be careful, you've got to be discerning, because there's some training that you get which is frankly useless. I was fortunate. I was trained at the BBC, right? But that was back then that was expensive and so on. But there are people who offer a good training, and there are really good websites, okay, where you can learn the mechanics of video and audio. Take advantage of them. YouTube is free. Okay, use it. Sink yourself into the subject. Okay, don't just do it on a surface level. Understand, because a lot of the stuff I did there, right, was quite complicated. Okay, and I only touched the surface. I could have spent the whole hour just talking about technical stuff and bored you to tears. But you need to know how it works. So that's what I'd say. Hook yourself up to someone who knows what they're doing, and watch them. Be an apprentice. Next question.
Thank you for that. Next question, last question is, so in this modern day age of, AI and deep face and all this sort of stuff. What would you say, or how can we sort of like maintain that sort of like authenticity and like human side of things, where you know you have all these quick edits and like easily sort of programmable stuff?
Yes, very good question. AI is revolutionizing the industry. Okay. Now I almost always question what I'm watching. Is it real? Okay, because AI can be used for wonderful good and incredible evil. Okay, but you can't ignore it. You have to use it. Okay, to the best of your ability. So, but the first thing you need to do is dedicate yourself spiritually to the Lord, because then you're guided by His Holy Spirit into how to use these tools. So that's what I would say. Never try to show off or be flashy, okay? Everyone can do that. Be authentic. So if you're going to use AI, make sure it's done ethically, okay? So people know if it's AI, right? So that's what I would do. I would try to avoid to fool people using AI so they're watching something that isn't what they think they're watching, because that's been deceptive, all right? So that's what I think. Be authentic, but don't be afraid to use the tools.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? You want? Yeah, sure, go ahead. Go ahead. What's my cutoff time? Okay.
Thanks once again. Right, in my church we have, we use vMix, and then all of a sudden we tend to have some problems. Sometimes it's a paid one, but sometimes it will just crash, even though it's been a good software. We tend to OBS doing well. Sometimes, it gets all hiccup. It's the free version one, but at the moment we're using both. We use NDI to do the actual streaming, but we just we pick the NDI source and record it and push it to various media platforms on the OBS. Okay, from your own observation, right? What's your take on those type of tools?
First of all, I would say that don't have a general purpose computer to do those important jobs. Buy a computer specifically to do your streaming, okay? Make sure the software, if you can afford it, is paid, because you normally get better options and it's free. There's a reason why it's free, all right? And then make sure you know how to use it properly, okay? So those are principles that I would use. Now, there's a saying, once you go Mac, you never go back, right? That's my philosophy, right? Because their machinery and their software is usually superior, in my view, than to your Windows PC, okay? I mean, my wife, bless her, she has to use a Windows machine. And the amount of times, right, she's calling on the name of the Lord when she's doing something and it starts to update right in the middle of something she's doing. I just laugh. I just say, once you go Mac, But anyway, okay, do your research. If you're going to go down the Windows route, don't just walk in and buy the first computer you see. Do your research. What computer runs the software that you want to use the best? And then buy that. You may have to even make a custom one, okay? But whatever you do, make sure that that's the only thing it does, and watch who gets on it. Don't allow, all of a sudden the teenagers are on Facebook, right? Avoid that, okay? So have your machine, have it dedicated, and then lock it down. So it does that one job. If you look at studios, sometimes their machines are not the latest and greatest, okay? They're years old, but they work. And once you've got a computer that works, don't change it, right? Only update it if you know the update isn't going to break your system. If it's going to break it, leave it alone. I made that mistake myself. I've got a box that I use for relaying video. I did an update. Oh, yeah. It took me 2 days to fix it.
That's
right?
true.
And eventually, I learned my lesson. So once you've got it settled, do a backup. Okay, get a hard drive, back it up. So if something happens, you can restore it to how it should work. Okay? Yeah, I think I've answered your question, hopefully.
Second one, we all do make presentations like hymns and kind of stuff in the church, right? Do you have any idea about if the conference, I don't know if you're the right person to ask the question, like if we have like a software that the conference got that everyone can tap into it in terms of the hymns presentation, because we all use either free show or Pro Presenter and stuff like that, right?
I'm not sure if the conference does that. I'm not really the right person to answer that question, but we will use Pro Presenter. It's a very good piece of software, and it's reliable. It's a bit tricky to set up, but once you get it sorted, you're fine. But I would recommend Pro Presenter because it's designed to do that. At a pinch, you can use things like Keynote or PowerPoint if you can. They work, okay, but they don't give the facilities that you really want. Choose the software that you want to use, and crucially, all the people who are going to operate it, get them trained how to use it before Sabbath morning. Anyone else? Anyone else? Going, gone. Okay. Well, I'd like to. Okay. I'd like to thank you for listening to my warblings, and I hope that I've given you some information that you can take from here, and it's just an introduction to the subject. Editing is a huge subject, and I've been doing it for years, and I'm still learning, okay? So the takeaways. From now on, every television program, film that you watch, you're watching it critically. Take notes. Why do they do that? Research on the internet, all the top producers, editors, and so on. What was their journey? How did they get to where they got to? Okay, learn from them. Practice. Do things like make a cup of tea and film it and edit it together and show it to someone. Is it interesting? Okay? Practice, make mistakes, practice, make corrections, and so on. And last of all, enjoy it. Make sure you enjoy the process. I love it when it's a blank screen and I have to fill it. And I fill it with imagery and sound, and at the end of it, I can see that somebody's learned something. There is no better feeling. You can make your creativity work for you. Thank you.